One woman wore Baccarat Rouge 540 to a second-round interview in a glass conference room at 9:15 in the morning, and by 9:28 the hiring manager had cracked the door without meaning to be rude. Another wore a quiet iris fragrance that almost nobody in the room consciously noticed, and she was described afterward as polished, measured, and impossible not to trust. Remember this, because it is the whole argument in one line. A job interview is not a date, and it is not a fragrance counter. It is a judgment test, and your perfume is being judged long before you finish your first sentence. That is why this matters more than the usual perfume list, full of fantasy language and influencer nonsense. The industry keeps pretending every fragrance is simply a matter of taste, as if there is no context, no power dynamic, no fluorescent lighting, no elevator ride, no conference table, no nervous body heat making a scent bloom in all the wrong directions. If you are over 40, you already know better. You know that the same perfume that feels magnetic at dinner can feel almost reckless at 10 in the morning when somebody is trying to decide whether you have judgment, restraint, and the kind of self-awareness they can put in front of clients. File this away. Interviews are smell tests for judgment, and almost nobody in this industry says that out loud, because bad advice sells more bottles than careful advice ever will. Baccarat Rouge 540 Eau de Parfum is positioned as the modern luxury signature, the fragrance people reach for when they want to smell expensive before they even open their mouth. And the current price is $335 for 70 milliliters. On skin, it gives you that strange mix of saffron, warm sugar, cedarwood, and that airborne ambergris effect that feels less like perfume and more like scented light. What it does extremely well is projection with polish. It travels beautifully, and in the right setting, it can make the wearer feel wrapped in cashmere and confidence. The catch is that in an interview, it creates a halo you cannot control, and that halo can read as performance, not presence. Hold that thought, because one of the winners does the exact opposite. Black Opium Eau de Parfum, $122 for 50 milliliters, is the fragrance women reach for when they want to feel awake, sensual, and put together, even if they slept badly and have no patience for the day ahead. The coffee note is plush rather than bitter, wrapped in vanilla, white florals, and a sugared darkness that feels almost edible on fabric. It does one thing very well. It gives immediate charisma, especially in the first half hour when you want to feel less invisible. But that is also the flaw no sales associate will underline for you. In a closed interview room, it reads warm, sweet, and faintly nocturnal, and that can make even a very smart woman seem like she dressed for the wrong kind of attention. This is the first pattern you need to watch. The perfumes that boost your mood fastest often distort your authority first. Libre Intense by Yves Saint Laurent, $145 for 50 milliliters, is sold on the idea of bold feminine freedom, and I understand why so many women reach for it when they want to feel commanding. Lavender, orange blossom, orchid, tonka, and a creamy amber base give it a beautifully pressed, blow-dried, gold jewelry kind of glamour. It does confidence well. It smells expensive, finished, and deliberately chosen. But in an interview, that intensity can become a problem because the sweetness underneath the aromatic top has a way of swelling with body heat, and what begins as poised can become insistently present by the midpoint of the conversation. Keep that in mind when we get to the scoring, because timing mattered more than initial beauty in this test. Angel Eau de Parfum, $112 for 50 milliliters, is the classic women reach for when they want to smell memorable, unmistakable, and completely themselves. The patchouli is dark and assertive, the fruit is neon, the praline is sticky, and the whole thing lands like velvet under stage lights. What it does well is identity. Nobody forgets Angel. That is precisely why you should not wear it to a job interview, unless the job is in nightlife, fashion performance, or something equally theatrical. In a professional setting, Angel often arrives before your resume does. And once that happens, you are no longer being evaluated in the clean, neutral space you think you are occupying. Remember this, too. Memorability is not the same thing as credibility. Good Girl Eau de Parfum by Carolina Herrera, $138 for 50 milliliters, is designed for women who want polish with flirtation and a little bit of edge. And the almond, tuberose, jasmine sambac, tonka, and cocoa make that message very clear. It wears beautifully in the evening, and it photographs well in the mind, which is one reason it remains so easy to reach for. It does duality well. It gives softness and sharpness at the same time. The problem is that the interview room is merciless with this structure. The creamy white florals and sweet base can go from sleek to suggestive quickly, especially if you are nervous and running warm. At 50 inches away, it can feel glamorous. At 30 inches across a desk, it can feel like an over-explanation. Tom Ford Black Orchid, $160 for 50 milliliters, is what a lot of women choose when they are tired of being underestimated and want scent to do some of the talking before they do. The truffle, dark florals, plum, patchouli, incense, and chocolate earthiness create that famous velvet curtain effect, rich and dramatic and beautifully composed. It does gravitas well. It can make you feel armored, but interviews rarely reward armor if they can smell it. Black Orchid is too dense, too opaque, too evening-coated for most professional rooms, and the woman wearing it may be interpreted as either overcompensating or arriving from a life the office cannot place. And once again, the pattern repeats. Power in fragrance is not the same as trust. Le Labo Santal 33, $235 for 50 milliliters, is the intelligent minimalist's status scent, the bottle women reach for when they want to smell expensive without sweetness and original without fuss. Cardamom, violet, leather, cedar, sandalwood, and that papery dry effect can feel beautifully editorial on the right skin. What it does well is cool detachment. It smells composed and culturally literate. The flaw is that it can turn sharply abrasive in recycled air, and on some skin, it pushes that pickle brine sandalwood effect so hard that half the room will notice it for the wrong reason. Interviews are no place for polarizing chemistry. If a fragrance needs your skin to behave perfectly to succeed, it is already too risky. Prada Infusion d'Iris Eau de Parfum, $180 for 100 milliliters, is often ignored by women who think it sounds too clean to be interesting, and that is their loss. Iris here is not lipstick powder or grandmother's drawer sachet. It is cool, rooty, refined, lifted with neroli and mandarin, and laid over soft woods and benzoin that never become sticky. What it does brilliantly is signal order. You smell as though your blouse is pressed, your thoughts are arranged, and nothing about you needs to shout to be taken seriously. The only catch, if you can even call it that, is that women who are addicted to drama may find it too restrained at first. Remember the phrase, clean handwriting, because this one writes exactly that way. That is the second pattern worth keeping. The fragrances that win in interviews are rarely the ones that beg to be admired. They are the ones that quietly imply discernment. Narciso Rodriguez, for her Pure Musc, $108 for 50 milliliters, is the perfume women reach for when they want softness without innocence and sensuality without syrup. Musk, jasmine, and orange blossom sit on skin like warm cotton and expensive soap, with just enough body to feel feminine rather than merely fresh. It does intimacy very well. It creates a small, elegant aura that can make you seem calm and approachable. The catch is that musks are tricky in interviews because some sit beautifully close and others bloom unexpectedly with warmth. And if you over-apply this one, it can become too skin-close in the wrong way, almost like the scent of somebody else's sweater rather than the scent of competence. It was close, very close, but not flawless. Hermès Un Jardin sur le Nil, $138 for 100 milliliters, is what women reach for when they want freshness without becoming generic and elegance without looking like they asked permission. Green mango, grapefruit, lotus, incense, and a dry riverbank kind of woodiness give it lift and intelligence. What it does exceptionally well is clarity. It smells airy, awake, and expensive in a quiet way, and it leaves room for the wearer rather than crowding her. The flaw is that on some skin it can disappear faster than you want, and if your interview day includes a long commute, a warm coat, and several hours before the meeting, you may find yourself wishing for more body. That matters because a winner in this category has to survive the real world, not just the first spray at home. If you want links to the exact bottles, along with my sample first guide for buying interview perfume without wasting money, they are in the description. I put them there because this is one category where blind buying gets expensive fast. A woman with taste should not have to learn this lesson at full retail. Before I tell you which one won, here is how I judged them, because none of the usual fluffy criteria were enough. First was interview distance behavior, which means how the perfume reads at roughly arm's length across a desk rather than in the dramatic first 10 minutes on your wrist. Second was thermal honesty, which is whether the scent stays coherent when your body warms up from nerves, because most perfumes reveal their true character under stress, not at rest. Third was social interpretation, the signal it sends to someone who knows nothing about perfume but instantly decides whether you seem measured, needy, sensual, flashy, controlled, or expensive in the wrong way. Fourth was residue discipline, which means what happens in the elevator, the hallway, the chair back, the coat collar, all those little scent traces that linger after you think the moment is over. Those 4 criteria matter more in an interview than compliments ever will. The winner was Prada Infusion d'Iris Eau de Parfum, $180 for 100 milliliters, and once you measure it by the right standard, there was no real contest. This is where both of those earlier phrases pay off. It smelled like clean handwriting, and it passed the smell test for judgment better than anything else in the lineup. At interview distance, it never became syrupy, loud, flirtatious, or abstractly expensive. Under body heat, it stayed composed. In social interpretation, it read as meticulous, intelligent, and self-possessed rather than eager to impress. And in residue discipline, it behaved beautifully, leaving only the faint suggestion of a woman who has standards, not a trail designed to recruit attention. That is what got it over the line. Not excitement, judgment. What sealed it for me was how consistently outside opinions echoed the same conclusion without being prompted. A fragrance consultant who works with women in law and finance independently ranked Infusion d'Iris at the top because, in her view, it made a woman seem prepared before she had said anything substantive. A longtime collector who owns more Iris perfumes than most stores said almost the exact thing I had already written in my notes, that it smells like order, not effort, and that distinction is everything in a professional room. When people who do not know each other arrive at the same read from different angles, I pay attention. So here is the buy guide I would actually give a friend. Buy Prada Infusion d'Iris, $180 for 100 milliliters, if you want one fragrance specifically for interviews, presentations, client meetings, and any situation where credibility matters more than charm. Buy Hermès Un Jardin sur le Nil, $138 for 100 milliliters, if you interview in warm weather, daytime creative environments, or anywhere a crisp green freshness will read as quick-minded rather than severe. Buy Narciso Rodriguez Pure Musc, $108 for 50 milliliters, if your workplace leans softer, more relational, more human-facing, and you know your own hand with musk is light. Buy Baccarat Rouge 540, $335 for 70 milliliters, for evenings, galleries, dinners, and the kind of social space where projection is an asset rather than a liability. Buy Black Opium, $122 for 50 milliliters, if you want comfort and charisma after dark, not if you are asking strangers to trust your judgment at 10 in the morning. Buy Libre Intense, $145 for 50 milliliters, for confident dinners, speaking events, or winter nights when glamour is appropriate and the room is not built to assess restraint. Buy Angel, $112 for 50 milliliters, if you already love Angel and are mature enough to wear it for yourself on your own time. Never because some list told you it was office safe. Buy Good Girl, $138 for 50 milliliters, for evenings when you want femininity with a stiletto edge and there is no conference table involved. Buy Black Orchid, $160 for 50 milliliters, for theater, winter cocktails, and places where a little darkness is part of the language. Buy Santal 33, $235 for 50 milliliters, only if you know with certainty that your skin keeps it smooth and dry, and even then, reserve it for situations where being cool matters more than being trusted. The larger rule is very simple. Wear the perfume that supports the room you want to win, not the fantasy you want to project. What this test revealed has very little to do with perfume, and a great deal to do with how grown women move through the world. Taste is not buying the loudest signal you can afford. Taste is knowing when to withhold, when to edit, and when quiet precision says more than spectacle ever could. If that is how you like fragrance discussed, not as marketing, but as judgment, memory, and strategy, then subscribe. And tell me this in the comments. If you had to walk into a second-round interview tomorrow in a glass conference room at 9:15 in the morning, would you trust Infusion d'Iris, Pure Musc, or Un Jardin sur le Nil to speak first on your behalf?